Hello.
Hey, Judy. Hey, Mona.
Hi,
Hi,
Dawn and
Dawn.
Judy.
Great to see you.
So good to see you, ladies. How are you? Everybody having a great day?
Yes, it's a big news day today, so I think
It
a lot of
is.
people have their minds in different directions.
Yes. Well, you planned this a little while ago, so we'll just go ahead and present it. And if people are into the live, great. Hi, and if you're replaying, hi to you guys too. She want me to just start out with my little blurb about
Sure.
this? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just gonna say personally. Okay, I do have a question for you guys first before I go. Personally, I was ready to file away Lori Daybell forever. It's like when I watch a trial, especially with the intensity, as this one that I did, the hearings and every single bit of news, it's like, okay, done, check, over, we're good. But when you said you were interested in reviewing the interview of Joe Ryan's attorney, who's Lori's previous husband number three, I guess. I was interested in that, and I'll talk about why when I talk a little bit more. But what got you interested in this, Judy?
Well, everybody has heard about crazy Lori Vallow Daybell, and I've watched some of the different trials and read articles and stuff. And then I'm pretty sure you and I did a live stream show a couple of years ago
Oh
about it,
wow!
right? But we didn't get many views, so I didn't really focus on it. But then this interview started popping up on my YouTube feed, so I'm like, who is this? Why do I keep getting shown this like older Asian guy on some channel? Then I realized, okay, I guess I should watch it. Oh, it's Joe Ryan's attorney. How interesting that
Yeah,
he had a Japanese American attorney
hmm
in Texas.
in
And
Texas.
so I watched the interview and I started getting more sucked into this whole case. And, because I didn't really hear much about Joe Ryan.
Right.
You just always hear about Tylee and
hmm
the kids and crazy, you know, Daybell, and then the recent trial where she was accused of trying to kill off her niece's husband and stuff. But there's so many people involved, it's mind boggling. So, anyway, that's
Yes.
how I gradually got sucked in more recently.
I love how YouTube will show us things that we didn't know we were into until we see it, and then we're like, "Well, thank you, YouTube, for showing that to me." What about you, Mona?
Well, you know, Dawn, that I was very in, even when I didn't want to be in, you kept nudging me to be in further. I'm like, I'm done with
Right.
Lori, Cox, Yanes, Logia, Ryan, Vallow, Daybell.
Right.
So I'm interested in this when Judy brought it up because it meant so much of a it was so different to watch it after the Arizona
Mm,
trials
mhm.
because I watched it in 2020 and I think I was feeling frustrated with all the people probably left in the dust that deserved cases. I wasn't even sure Charles was going to have any justice. So when I saw this attorney, I remember at first I was like, whoa, I can't believe how honest this guy is. And now I'm like, wow, I can't believe how right on he was. And I really enjoyed it for that to review it.
Yeah, isn't he really is, and we'll see that when we go through the interview. And I have been I can thank Annie Cushing for my interest in this and for the extensive amount of coverage and details and probing that she did. Annie Cushing is no longer on YouTube. I hope she comes back someday, and I hope that the police do look at this case again in earnest. But she's Joe Ryan's sister, and she was a previous reporter and then became a data analyst, and she's really good at her job, and she went through all kinds of things. And so I'll pop in just briefly. I don't want to be doing all the talking here, but there's just so much to this. And she left behind her legacy, a lot of like a timeline and a lot of details that otherwise people don't know of. And in the description I don't know if the description is the same on your channel, but there's a document, a petition to the Phoenix Police Department to reopen Joe's case. Of course, Annie's doesn't have a ton of hope for that to happen, but out of respect, you might want to look at it once you hear this interview. You might be wanting to sign that.
Dawn, do you have any idea why she took down her channel after doing so much work?
Right. Well, she said her goodbyes to her followers, and she was always a super class act. I think I didn't screenshot it or anything, but I think basically now that Lori's behind bars for good, and she did actually attend. Of course, she attended Lori's trial in Idaho because Tylee is her niece and Joe's only child, his only child with Lori, and his only child, period. So she attended that trial, and she did end up attending her trial on the Charles Vallow murder. She didn't attend Brandon Boudreaux, and after Brandon Boudreaux, she said her goodbyes and said it's time for her to put this behind her because it was so it was just had, if you can imagine the emotional impact that it would have on her. I believe what she said, don't quote me please because it's been a long time, but I believe what she said when she was interviewed once is that she was doing a run in New York. She lives in New York City. She was doing a run and she just was face to face all of a sudden with this billboard about the missing kids. There was Tylee, her niece. And I'm not even sure if she was informed at that time or if that's how she got the news. But if you can imagine how traumatizing, and then to hear of how she died and all of these things and the irresponsible adults, not just Lori, but so many times when things were missed. And that child and JJ could have been saved, including, the Phoenix police not even investigating Charles in the first place. If Charles would have been investigated in earnest, perhaps Lori would have been held back in an Arizona jail facing trial with Alex, her brother, and who attempted to kill Joe Ryan, which the attorney will talk about. I mean, with that kind of baggage, I can imagine, you have to at some point make a point where you're just not spending so much time going over the details. And not that she repeated the details, but just being reminded. She just wanted to turn it. That's a long answer, but only because I don't know for sure, and I'm not her. I want to do it justice.
But Dawn, didn't she do a victim impact statement at Chad's trial?
I believe it was at Lori's trial.
I think it was Chad.
I think she was originally, excuse me, I think she was supposed to do one at Chad's. And then she got taken off the list, but she did it at Lori's, or it might have been the other way around. But your memory is better than mine, so
maybe I don't know.
One or the other. She was on the list.
She did a letter at Tylee's memorial too. It was she really expressed herself well. And A Murderous Heart was her channel. Correct.
Yes, and I'm going to pop in with that during the interview where that came from, because I think he refers to it in the interview. He doesn't refer to A Murderous Heart, but he refers to something else. So
interesting.
Yeah. So hi, Five Car and Annie. So okay, let me just give a quick thing, and then I'll get this rolling.
Okay. Thanks.
So I had a review. It's so funny. I just did this for myself. I was putting some notes together, especially after Annie left. It's like I got to try to remember what happened in case the trial or the case ever gets reopened. So there's still questions surrounding the death of Joe Ryan. He's the former husband of Lori Vallow Daybell. So she was Lori Ryan for a while. That's where Tylee Ryan got her name, and Colby Ryan because he adopted Colby. Lori's daughter initially made SA allegations against Joe when she was very, very young, but later recanted. And a therapist actually suggested that she was coached by Lori. And Joe Ryan, it did end up going to trial anyway, but Joe Ryan was found not guilty of those allegations. So he was not an SA'er. And I think a lot of people don't know that. And I think if nothing else that we get across tonight, that's important, because people's reputation is probably everything, right? But he's still, and the lawyer will talk about this, how he still faced difficulty spending time with Tylee. So according to Annie Cushing, who I mentioned is Joe Ryan's sister, there are lingering questions, and I'm quoting from her change.org petition. There are lingering questions from the 121 photos taken the day Joseph was found, such as indicators that Joe was preparing for a trip with Tylee. There were girl gifts and travel accoutrements next to his suitcase, which was in the middle of his office. But Tylee said in April 2018 that she had not seen her dad in more than a year. Did his eagerness to see his daughter, who Vallow went to great lengths to keep from her father, make him a target? Lori Vallow's brother also had already assaulted Joseph in an attempt to murder him once. He also shot and killed Lori Vallow's fourth husband in 2019. So Lori Vallow was also in possession. This is really, and by the way, Annie went through the 121 photos, and there's stuff there that the police clearly did not look into. But I'm not going to get into all that because I don't have them. It's going to be really hard. So, but she was also in possession of a box of photo albums from Joe's childhood, as well as a box of file folders, both reeked of decomposed flesh. She gave them to Annie, and they smelled like a dead body. She claims that Phoenix Police Department let her in to see his apartment and let her leave with the box of albums and files. But why would the PPD allow a former spouse to have access to so much personal information? She asks. So I mentioned this petition. The petition calls on the Phoenix Police Department to form a rigorous and transparent investigation into Joe Ryan's death, which was 2018, including but not limited to cell phone records, GPS data, social media interactions, email records, and interviews of neighbors. And then I can put the link in the comments. I do have it in the description. So, yeah, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to that whole.
Oh, thanks for the info. I mean, there are just so many details to this case.
There really are, and it's unfortunately made. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are tired of hearing from Lori, and she would probably represent herself if she was ever taken to court. But for this, it's not quite as open and shut, and it's just, in fairness to the survivors, like his sister and his memories. So, yeah.
And to Tylee's memory, in fairness to her.
Yeah. Even though she's not
and
here.
Baby Colby, who was also involved in the whole manipulation.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
There's a lot to that.
Mm-hmm.
So should we get to the chat after the end, or should we get to the chat now?
Oh, well, I mean, it's up to you. There aren't that many chat messages here, but Chelsea says she thinks Annie had haters. That's what I was going to ask you. Do you think that perhaps she left YouTube because she couldn't stand so many people criticizing her?
I don't think she minded the criticism because she was there for a long time doing her own thing. And just from what I could see of her, she didn't care about being criticized. I don't think that would be the reason. I could be wrong, but I think maybe she was tired of it, but I can't say. She never really expressed. I mean, what she would do when she would get a criticism, and it was like a comment or an email, whatever, she would bring it up and actually discuss it openly. And she was very fair and balanced and tried to be humble about it and say, hey, maybe I got this wrong or whatever. She wasn't just like, here, this is what I'm going to believe. You can't change my mind. She was very, that's why I liked listening to her so much, because she seemed pretty introspective about the whole thing. So, but everybody has haters. Even good people have haters. So,
yeah,
It was very detailed, very detailed.
So detailed.
team.
Yeah, some people couldn't handle all the details. I know I sent her page to a lot of people and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't handle all these details. She's very detailed.
Yeah. Well, she sounds very impressive. She had cancer and she was also going to grad school and running a business during
And
the
had
trials.
her own family, her own life. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that enough of the justice was done for Tylee that she just focused on her daily life.
Yeah. And
That's all.
she seems to be doing that now for sure.
Mhm.
Because I could imagine that if you don't have a lot of hope, and it's funny we're talking about this because I sent Mona something, I don't know, texted you a few weeks ago about Joe Ryan, and Mona's like, oh, they're never going to open that.
I did, and you went. I said they're never gonna get that one to court, and you said maybe.
Well, I think I said, as long as Annie has hope, I'll have hope. But I realize I'm realistic and she's very realistic too. So it's like probably would feel like banging your head against a wall, and why
Well,
keep
yeah.
doing that?
we might be busy watching Lori's retrial. That hasn't been denied yet.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sure
It will
that's going
be.
to get denied.
yeah, it
Yeah.
will. It's not going to
Yeah. But didn't the autopsy conclude that he died of some sort of like heart problem? So I think it would be pretty hard to prove that Lori and Alex, murdered him, or
Well,
I
I
don't know
mean,
what crime.
yeah, as far as proving it, especially
Yeah.
10 years or 8 years later, 7 years later. Talk about that, Mona. Mona has more medical expertise than I do, but a lot of things can induce a heart attack.
Well, fascinatingly, his autopsy wasn't too dissimilar to Alex's.
Right.
And then everybody all of a sudden has to be cremated right away. So whatever. And I do believe I have the toxicology report, but it was kind of fuzzy. But there was a lot in his system. And Lori was well known to drug people,
Mhm.
allegedly. She was
Allegedly.
always putting things in shakes and drinks. And I think a lot of Joe's problem was how unhealthy Lori was offering to Tylee's, life by what she fed her, what
Exactly.
beverages,
Yes,
food.
which is interesting that the attorney, mentioned that as well. Yeah. Yeah. So, and Bean Bees, yes, and Chelsea, that's in those 121 or 122 photographs. The two plates and glasses in the kitchen sink, the bottle, the hair dye in the bathroom with women's sunglasses. Um, Annie said that Joe was super meticulous, like John O'Keefe actually was described to be, who was just recently, Karen Reed was just acquitted of his murder charges against him, and it was a mess. Like she said, he would never allow anyone to not put a glass on a coaster, type of thing. And there were glasses, half drinks, cokes, this hair dye, all this weird stuff. There was a bathroom window that was left open. You could see all these from the photographs that Annie went through in great detail. Yeah.
Wow. So it does look suspicious
It's
then.
very
His
suspicious if you
home
look at the
was like that.
photos. Yeah, and it is very obvious that no one looked at it with any seriousness. And I think, and we're going to get into the interview here, but I think what to look for in the interview, and I was just amazed at listening it again, like you said, Mona, is that, this his attorney, Joe Ryan's attorney, family law attorney, even said he and Annie said the same thing. He wasn't a drinker. He wasn't a drug abuser. This broke his heart. It broke him. And these charges against him, and then he started drinking and that type of thing. So, I think he was helped along quite a bit, which is also really sad to think of his last years on this earth, just like Tylee's. She was probably filled with fear for years.
People self-medicate when the stress is overwhelming. It doesn't mean that they're drug addicts.
Right.
They're using whatever means they can to make it through the day and all the pressure.
Yeah. Right. And because he had been dead for several days, like Chelsea mentions, that makes the autopsy if they're not looking for anything. And I think it was, even though they were divorced, I think Lori had something to do with him being cremated, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
I'm sure.
How convenient, huh?
Even though
Go ahead and cremate him.
Yeah. And I don't think Annie found out until later. Yeah, it's just so it's beyond tragic. It's beyond tragic. I'd rather talk about him in this interview than give who any airtime. I won't watch any of her interviews. I haven't watched any of her interviews. I am not interested in giving her any. She just wants to be famous and people talking about her. I don't want to talk about her.
Yeah, because she's so mentally ill. She's probably so happy to prance around and be on TV.
Be in demand. Like, why do we need to interview this woman? I don't understand it. I don't understand it. No shade against anybody who wants to watch it, but just that's my personal feeling is, after seeing everything she did and showing zero remorse, she could care less. I don't want to hear from her.
Well, Judy Dawn encouraged me strongly to watch these last two trials. I said, I can't watch her. I can't listen to her anymore. And you're like, I don't know, you do your little Dawn thing.
I watched them.
Like, okay, I watched the whole thing.
Well, I don't know. I guess I just wanted it to be done. I think I wanted it to be done. So that's why I was surprised when you suggested this. I was like, okay, well, this is this is different because this is Joe Ryan and Annie, and whomever else. So, all right. So shall we start?
Let's go ahead then.
Let's roll.
And maybe we should jump over the beginning part because I'm still afraid of getting into trouble with the guy who did his YouTube channel, in case he gets mad that we're showing his stuff. So.
Oh, who Justin Lum is a reporter for
Fox
the
10. Reporter.
Okay.
I really like.
He's also Asian. I love Justin.
Yeah, I know. So I was like, this is very interesting. Yeah.
Well, it's okay to have reaction videos. It's public use, and I'm sure he would appreciate it. And I put his link to follow if you're not already following him in the description. Yes. For sure.
Okay, Justin's.
Oh, you want me to go? I'm just like sitting. I'm watching.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'm watching it go around. I gotta find it.
We'll just play little chunks and then we can give commentary.
Okay, let me find it. Oops, where is it? I've got so many things open on my computer.
What did you just want to say what this is?
This is a full interview with former lawyer for Lori Vallow's third husband, Joe Ryan. He's going to introduce it himself right here.
All right, Keith, first start off, spell your first and last name, give me your title and your law firm.
My name is Keith Taniguchi, Keith Taniguchi. And my name is Keith Taniguchi, and my law firm is Law Office of Keith Taniguchi.
So you specialize in family law, correct? Custody battles or no? Other things?
I do family law, probates, and criminal law.
All right. So how long did you represent Joseph Ryan during his custody battle?
It was a couple of years.
A couple of years. Okay. And this was back in Austin, Texas. I want to say around 2007 to 2009.
Yes.
That period. Okay.
So I'm just going to interject. Lori was already married to Charles Vallow at this point. So this wasn't a divorce. This was still custody of Tylee. So they were no longer married. This wasn't a divorce fight. And it's interesting, Judy, that he practices both family and criminal law. Is that something that's common?
Really, I looked at Taniguchi's website. It looks like he's focused more on family law these days because that just makes sense. Like it's totally different areas of law. In my county, it's totally different courthouses too. So why would you want to spread yourself too thin?
I wondered if it had anything to do with some of his cases becoming criminal as well, right? Because like this was Joe, he was representing him in his custody case, but then they also had this criminal case for SA going on. So I don't know. Just a thought. Okay.
Just, tell me what you remember about that ongoing battle. What comes to mind now? It's been a long time now.
Well, I've been thinking about this since you called, and it really started out as a criminal case. It started out that he was accused of sexually abusing his daughter. And the genesis of that claim was that they claimed that Tylee had made an outcry about sexual abuse. And the county that's south of where I'm at, which is Travis County, Texas, that county is Hays County, Texas. They became involved in this case, and they brought out the full force. They brought out all their child abuse specialists, and they even went, one of the claims, I believe, and I hate to be, too, what do you want to call it? Well, I'll tell you the truth, and the truth is that they said that he was doing all kinds of abhorrent sexual contact with her.
I'm just going to jump in here because he's talking about it being really graphic, and there was a time that Annie mentioned how Lori would be describe this allegations in such graphic terms. It was really quite in front of Tylee. And she even said to her, I can't remember. Okay, I can't say exactly what the context was, but at one point she said to Tylee, well, you don't want this to happen to you again, do you? And she used these graphic terms. Can you even imagine doing that? If she really was a victim, I don't think she was, but I think the graphicness and the aberrance came from Lori, obviously, because he was found not guilty. But that's just, I was shocked because like you said, Mona, on reading this second. Should I put this faster?
So among other things, they went over there and
Sure,
took his
maybe
bed,
1.25.
took the top off his bed, and they took all the sheets and whatever he owned, and they took it over there to and had it inspected for DNA, because they thought they were going to find his DNA and her DNA all over the bed or somewhere. And because they surprised him, it was, increased the chance that he couldn't go over there and somehow tamper with the evidence. And so they went off and they spent months over there looking at this mattress. And of course, it came out nothing. And in the meantime, he went and took a polygraph test, and she was sent to a counseling. And I don't remember how she arrived with this counselor. This counselor was allegedly, and she's now deceased, was an expert on child abuse. And she had a partner that also claimed the same title. And so they went through this counseling, and Tylee kept, saying the same thing until one day Tylee recanted. And
this is a 4-year-old Tylee, probably. This is a very young girl.
I'm telling you that Tylee, at the time she made this outcry, she may have been younger. I mean, I was totally amazed how somebody could believe an outcry from a child that young.
Wow.
But see what it is. You could beat the rat, but you can't beat the ride. And so he had to follow the ride. So in the meantime, they went and denied him access to Tylee, except for through this counselor. So his ability to see Tylee became less and less and less, all with the, what's her name? Lori condoned all this activity. In fact, she encouraged it.
And speaking of that, so there was a therapist with Roxanne's house in San Marcos, Texas. I believe that's what I saw in the court documents. And the therapist said Tylee had not made an outcry to her about potential sexual abuse allegations against Joseph. The therapist at one point said the counseling became almost counterproductive, and she became concerned that Tylee had been pushed by Lori to make an outcry. Did Joseph know that this was a possibility? How did he react to that? And I'm sure you believe that Lori was doing some coaching here.
Well, again, when I say the divorce happened in Travis County, where I'm at, the claims came out of Hays County, where Roxanne, she was the investigator on the case. And so that's how she became the investigator, because she happened to be working for the police department or law enforcement in Hays County. And so that's, and all those people that report you read was a part of that investigation. And yes, Tylee she didn't keep making the accusation, but she didn't recant it for some time. And at some point, she did recant it. I don't believe it was to that person. It was to Vivian.
Okay. But what was Joseph had to be very upset. I mean, he probably had to confide in you about, why this was happening and why he believed that they weren't.
It's such a good question. Like, did he know? He obviously must have known that this was happening, that she was being coached. I mean, since he didn't do it, he was not guilty. I looked up the place he's referring to. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling here. That house, it's a children's, why can't I find it? It's called Roxanne's house. And I thought it was interesting. It was Roxanne's house, but she was also the investigator for the police department. So it must have been two different Roxannes. I was a little confused by that. Did you guys notice that?
No,
No.
maybe
But it should be different, because that would be weird if the investigator is also running some sort of like child custody visitation type place.
Right. I thought it was like, that's odd, like two Roxannes. But anywho, I think she was either 4 or 5 or on the bridge of being 5 years old from the dates that I could figure out from the court paperwork and stuff. But the therapist there said Tylee was coached, the therapist at Roxanne's house. And that's in Hays County, Texas. I looked at their website up, and it's a children's advocacy center. It says Roxanne's house is a children's advocacy center of the Hays Caldwell Women's Center, located in San Marcos, Texas, serving both Hays and Caldwell counties. Roxanne's house is both CACTX and NCA accredited. So, and then the other thing that he doesn't mention, I just pop in here, is that Lori's dad was a known repeated SA offender with multiple victims by
I didn't know that.
by many accounts. Yes, allegedly.
Oh.
So anyway, it says our mission is to reduce the trauma experienced by child victims and their protective caregivers by providing child-friendly facility and support services along the path of healing. The purpose of Roxanne's house is to provide a safe and neutral space where children can begin their healing journey. And then he talks about her guardian ad litem. But I was just thinking about how perverse, I can't even wrap my head around it. Maybe the chat can help us, you guys. But how can you imagine being a mother and telling your kid to say these things and then going so far as to putting her in counseling for it? Like,
yeah, that's really screwed up, because I have had custody cases myself where
I wondered,
I was representing the father who was accused of not like real assault, but improper behavior. And it was so obvious. It was just because the woman was like hysterical and didn't want the dad to have any contact with the kid. So it's just like really tough when you're dealing with these screwed up people that will make up a pack of lies
it just
to try to get advantage.
Yeah. It's just so hurtful. I mean, I can imagine. I mean, to have somebody accuse you of something that's not true, I know personally, we've all had it happen, even in just small things, is really doesn't feel good. Our character being assassinated. And then on top of that, he doesn't get to see his child. His wife is leaving him for another man. It's like, yeah, he might have had a few drinks too many for a while. I get it. So, yeah. Okay.
Don, you're still.
Yeah. So
can you believe she did that after everything we've seen? It's believable.
I wasn't saying, did you believe that? I don't believe she did it. I'm saying how when I think about it, it's hard. It's so perverse to picture all of this happening. And I know it's not just her. I know it's happening with it. Other people use these tactics. And it's just like, to follow that ruse that far. It's one thing to make an accusation, but then to put your kid in counseling like for something that they don't need counseling for. I mean, what a mind melt. Like, that poor child must have just been beyond confused.
Well, it sounds like whatever county she made these accusations took it extremely seriously and surprised me of everything that they had in place, that they investigated it so thoroughly. That surprised me.
I mean, I don't know, Judy, don't you think those accusations are taken pretty seriously
Yeah, and also,
in general?
I'm thinking of this other divorce and custody case I handled where my client did make these accusations against her husband right after we had a custody hearing. And the judge didn't believe her at all. And the judge who was a woman, she was really disgusted with my client and said, well, how can she do this knowing what the kids are going to be put through? Because, if there are allegations of assault, then the poor kid is going to have to be, examined on their bodies and poked and prodded, by these strangers who want to see if there's any signs of actual penetration or something. So anyway, I mean, so it is bad. I mean, on one hand, you do want, you want things to be investigated thoroughly. But on the other hand, later, if you find out or you think someone's just making it up, then you think like, why would you put your kids through this? This is such
Exactly.
abuse.
Oh, yeah. She was the abuser, evidently, because he saying that because he was found not guilty. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, Lori is, as I got to know her secondhand, I could tell that she exhibited some strange behavior. And I personally came to believe that there was something other than the truth motivating all this. And I believe told you that this Mormonism that she has, and I'm not against Mormons or anything else, but she was a big believer in Mormonism. And I got to give you some context that when this was going on in 2007 in Travis County, or in Texas for that matter, out by Abilene, Texas, there was this sect, and it was called Warren Jeffs. And I had this place that was a Mormon city kind of. They were building it from scratch, and they had created this minor city with multiple people, hundreds of people that migrated there and built this Mormon, just say like Salt Lake City. You read the story about Salt Lake City, a bunch of Mormons felt, they were being prejudiced. So they all gathered and they went and created their own society someplace. Well, this place was a modern day version of that. And so knowing now that I was dealing with religion, and religion, when it starts interfering with the law, gets rather scary. So I actually went out and purchased a number of books about Mormonism just to find out really what drives the religion. And I think I told you this during this investigative stage. I got a phone call from the second person in charge of the Mormon church. No kidding, second person. He calls me up and vouches for her authenticity. And I'm like,
I thought that was really wild. Is it because they're protecting their religion that they would do such a thing? Because she wasn't that well connected, was she? What did you guys think of that?
Well, I think it's sad if people try to use their religion as a way to bolster their credibility or to act like they're being victimized because of their religion.
Mm-hmm.
Because what did that have to do with her trying to keep the father away from the little kid and making
how would they
false
know?
Accusations?
Yeah. How would he know? How would this bishop or whomever know? And I thought it was interesting, too, that he brought up Warren Jeffs, which is, Warren Jeffs is in prison for life for SA. So interesting that he just brought that up as like a parallel thing. And yeah.
I just looked it up, his house that they're talking about. One of his ex-wives purchased the land, and now it's helping people that are leaving that church.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah. And Annie's saying maybe she knew things about them. Yeah. Wow.
Like flabbergasted. How do you it'd be like getting the Pope to call me, or the bishop under the Pope or whatever, to call me about some disciple. And I was like, this is getting out of hand again.
This is during the custody battle. You got a call from this person? Okay. And so as all this was going on, what was it like? About a year, almost a year and a half of visitation issues for Joe. So he didn't get to see Tylee, right? There was a good amount of time. That was a big challenge.
Well, then she goes to court and starts pushing this. We actually went to trial over a portion of this in a criminal trial about the allegations of all this, the sexual abuse. We had a jury trial and it came back not guilty.
And how close did Joseph ever get to getting full?
Yeah, I just want to pause that again and say, again, if nothing else, right, he was found not guilty for those allegations of SA against Tylee.
By a jury in Texas.
Exactly. Right.
I don't mean anything by that, but.
Well, they're known to be, tougher there. Yeah. So just, if nothing else, because there are a lot of people who are still towing the line that he was an SA-er, right? Because she went on and on about that. So I just want to.
Full custody at all. Was there ever a chance of that happening? Any chance?
Well, yes, but yes and no. Joe didn't really have the wherewithal to do that, but he also was very loved his daughter so much that he believed that Lori would take care of her, and he never expected that it would go where it did. But at one point, we found out that Tylee had this pancreatic or some kind of condition, and
she had pancreatitis. Yeah, she was at the Phoenix Children's Hospital, I believe.
Well, that was happening here too, and Lori was feeding her nothing but processed food, and Joe was just getting more and more concerned because it was now a health issue, and so that was turning his attitude towards wanting to become the managing conservator. That's the one who makes all the decisions.
Mm-hmm. There was also an issue of overpayment of child support. I got some emails that were provided. An audit was done. Joseph said that he paid over $9,000 in child support, basically overpaid. And you were CC'd on this email. Can you talk about the financial challenges he had because of all of this happening?
Well, he was making pretty good money. So at first it wasn't a big deal. But she then at one point decided she was going to move off to Arizona. She was living in Texas, here in Austin, Texas. So that was like what you might call convenient. But when she went off to Arizona, expenses went up considerably. And it's our belief at the time she did it intentionally. And so we had to go to court again and try to stop this. And the courts.
So that's really interesting too. They believed at the time that she actually moved out of state in order to create more, to hurt Joe Ryan financially, so that it would be more costly for him to visit Tylee.
And difficult, like he'd have to travel.
Right. He'd have to miss work. He'd have
to go to a new place to have a supervised visit.
Exactly. Right. Yep.
Can I say something? This is where I have a big question here, because at least in my state, once you have a court order, the other parent can't just unilaterally just take the kid and run off to another state. Because if he had a court order saying that he gets to have visitation with the child, 1 weekend a month, even if it has to be supervised, that's still something that Lori would have had to follow. So it's just kind of bizarre that she got to just take the child and run off to further deprive him. I'm just wondering if maybe at that time, maybe he hadn't gotten any sort of court-ordered visitation yet. Do you think? Because of the allegations against him?
Well, it does sound like he said that even though he was found not guilty, they still had very strict, they didn't just go into shared custody. But you're right about that in terms of that's the whole thing with Dan Markell and Wendy Adelson. She wanted to move 8 hours away. But I'm guessing that he had run out of money to pay a lawyer to fight it. And he might have already been starting to just give up. I'm not sure, not totally give up, but just.
Yeah, not fight it through the legal system.
Right. And I'm reading between the lines because you see where the lawyer said earlier, what did he say? Well, I was reading between the lines that he was just kind of indicating that Joe was starting to feel like, well, maybe this was the best thing, that Lori just take her. And he, of course, didn't realize that she was who she is, right? So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
In Austin, Texas, and Travis County, Texas, sided with her because they didn't have any real evidence about any, wrongdoing or badness, and she appeared like this great mother. She's good at it. And so
we've heard that, yes, the mother of the year image that people have admired her before, for that sort of behavior. And
for instance, we have what they call a guardian ad litem, and that is a person that's appointed to represent the best interests of the child. And so we had one here in Travis County appointed to her, and she went all the way out to Phoenix, Arizona on Travis County money to go and inspect the house. And she came back with this glowing reviews that Lori was, quote, perfect, and the house was all nice. I think they had a swimming pool, and it was just really fantastic. So we couldn't prevail on that issue. So when Tylee ended up moving to Arizona, I think it's Chandler.
Yes.
And then, so Joe now had to do all his visitations and whatnot with the added expense of going through there, and his job is now becoming more tenuous. And he was running into now real problems out in Chandler. You must have some of that information, but if you go to the police department in Chandler, there's going to be multiple police reports about all the run-ins that they had. And she was on a full-fledged campaign to deny him access to Tylee. He would tell me in telephone calls about how he went to the Christmas play. He's supposed to be able to see her, and somehow, after he was supposed to have visitation with her after the play, and of course, Lori grabs her and takes her away, and he never has his visitation. He had multiple of those experiences.
Yeah, there are multiple police reports between Chandler and Gilbert Police Department. So back to the audit. In the email, turns out Lori said that Joseph actually owed $8,000 and told him that over the 6 years, it was his intention not to pay child support for Tylee, and saying that he was only hurting Tylee. It felt like a guilt trip. Yeah, I'm sure that you saw this. Was this the way that they interacted? Was this the way she spoke to him usually?
Who, Lori?
Lori to him, saying, this is your obligation, and it's sad that, you can't provide and pay this child support for your daughter.
That's typical in this practice. They always, there is a legal solution. It's called an enforcement action. And you go over to court, you say you're not paying your child support, and then they'll go have a hearing and determine whether those allegations are true. And if not, they're going to either tell you, if you don't pay this money by tomorrow, or 90 days or some time limit, that you're going to jail. But in the meantime, and this is now somewhat hearsay, her lawyer was becoming more and more disgruntled with her because she didn't pay anybody. And he tells me nowadays that she owed him $50,000 in attorney's fees. And this is because he was constantly haranguing on Joe as we have a term, Rambo lawyer. He was doing a good job.
Wow.
But now he says he's never been paid. And he tried to get off the case. He filed a motion to withdraw, and the court wouldn't let him off. So he ended up having to go to trial under a court order, and she was not paying him.
Never got paid.
His name is Don Hindera, and I'm sure he'll stand behind that. He became more and more disgruntled.
Evidently, that's also kind of a family trait, not paying, especially to lawyers. I know that Annie had some things to say about that too, and it wasn't. I don't know, and maybe Chelsea is there's also a lawyer she had that died suspiciously, and that she owed money to. So,
geez, everybody's dying around her.
Exactly.
So suspicious.
Do you have to get your legal bills? Like, do you have a problem with that, Judy, in your cases?
But I wouldn't let it go to the point where the person owes me anything close to even like $3,000.
That much money.
That's why attorneys ask for it so much up front, because there are so many people who seem nice at first, but then later they get upset at you because they don't like what you're telling them, or you didn't get them the results that they wanted. So then they're like, oh, well, then I'm not going to pay the last bill. Because sometimes you do go for the retainer. But luckily, in my county, I've never seen a judge force an attorney to keep representing someone. That's terrible that the judge still made Lori's attorney do the trial or do the hearing with
Mm-hmm.
no money being paid. That's
Mm-hmm.
just mean. I mean, how do you stay in business like that?
I don't know, but I enjoyed how funny this was to this attorney, along with
I mean, he thought it was hilarious.
because he had to deal with this monster attorney that didn't wind up getting paid.
Yeah,
So
but
it
they
sort
seem
of served him right, huh?
well, I think they're friendly though. I got the impression they
Yeah.
still talk and everything. So and maybe Chelsea in the chat can fill us in on the dates, but there was a time in here where Charles and Lori I mean my point being she did so much to just tear him down and just like build just I mean it wasn't enough to just leave him and take the it was just like she had to basically kill the guy spiritually and then physically perhaps we don't know, but she at this time around this time Charles and Lori were married, of course, and they organized this all expenses paid for invited family members trip, a lovely trip. I can't remember where they went, but it was quite nice. And Annie, Joe's sister, was invited and her children, at which time during that trip a lot of bizarre things went on. But at that time Annie didn't know that Joe wasn't the problem because of this campaign going on. Of course, he was drinking and just falling apart at that time, so she wasn't aware. But in any case, she even went so far as to reach into his family like that. And I'm sure to this day, I'm guessing that Annie just feels super sad about that. But I don't remember how old Tylee was at that time. But it just to show the level of gaslighting that she would do and
Manipulation.
all of it.
Her, and he has all kinds of opinions about him. Her.
I did see his name Hindera in the paperwork. Now, back in 2007, you tell me how you found out about the taser attack, the stun gun used by Alex Cox.
Well, we were in this now. Well, I don't know if it was in the criminal, but I believe it was in the divorce case. I'm pretty certain it was that he was getting his visitations now, and they were supposed to be because of the claims of sexual abuse. He was getting what they call supervised visitation, and it's stepped. That was a kind of. I actually was in bewilderment. He goes to jury trial. They say it doesn't happen, and he doesn't all of a sudden get his visitation. The courts intervene, and they say, well, let's err on the side of caution. So they start this stair step thing that was like 1 hour every week, 2 hours after a couple of weeks, 3 hours, and slow. It's called stair step. And they also he couldn't do it. He had to be supervised. And so they have places in Austin where you can do supervised visitation. And so we had set up a certain time for him to go have his visitation at this supervised setting. And it was like immediately after the next day, say we're in court on Tuesday, and he's going to have his visit on Wednesday. But he goes over there and has his visitation and comes out, and Alex comes over to him as he's getting in his car and sticks a stun gun on him. Okay. Now, how Alex would know about a visitation that just got announced the day before at a location that's not a normal location can only lead you to the conclusion that Lori told him.
I'm just going to pause there too, because Alex and Lori had been sort of severed for quite some time. So this was notable. It was only a few days before that she reached out to Alex and made up with him. And he lived out of state or out of town, at least I believe it was out of state at the time. So he came to her place the night before and hadn't seen her in a long, long time. And like he said, she would be the only one who would know where to find Joe to do this.
Sounds a lot like Brandon Boudreaux's situation, where all of a sudden Alex knew where his new house was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know, we ended up going, the state filed charges on Alex, and Joe went and testified against him, and they stuck him in jail, I believe, for a year at least. Maybe it was a 2-year sentence, and he got out early because good time, but he was convicted for aggravated assault.
Yeah, Alex entered the guilty plea. It took about a year, 2008, and did about 3 months. So he didn't do too much time in Travis County. But like you said, this location for the exchange or for the visitation, I guess you could say, it was a private location, only for the parties involved to know, right? So
yes.
Then Alex I don't believe he was living in Austin, so he had to get some sort of communication to figure out where this was happening. This was the first supervised visit. Joseph hadn't seen Tylee for nearly a year and a half, but there was a statement, I don't know if you recall this, but Lori saying she had no idea how Alex got to Austin from Arizona, and how he even knew of a visit. Do you remember her kind of using that excuse?
Yes, I do remember that. That's impossible.
So you believe it's clear that Lori had to tell him where this visitation
Okay,
happened?
I do kind of remember this this fact pattern that you're talking about, what was going on. And yes, he had to come here, and I do believe he went over to her house that night. He was at her house the night before that he went over there and attacked her.
Yeah.
So he comes in and he goes over to her house, and then he's over there and stun guns him the next day.
And did this happen before he saw Tylee or after the attack?
After he saw Tylee.
He's going to his car and then it happens.
Yeah.
All right.
And then he ended up in the emergency room in a hospital over there, and he was in the hospital for 3 days. And I mean, I'm just can't help but wonder whether his death was somehow, precipitated by being stuck with a stun gun, sufficient enough to put you in the hospital for several days, emergency room.
Yeah, I've never been tased, but at close range and being stunned multiple times, just what he was in a lot of pain, I'm sure. What was he telling you? I know it's been a long time, but how did he bring up his safety concerns even after, just kind of head on a swivel for Alex?
Well, Alex then got arrested, and so he was out of the picture. And we were assuming that prosecution, I mean, if he did it again, he wouldn't be in jail for 3 months or something. They put him away for 20 years. So that in itself was some kind of protection for Joe. He never did have any more problems with Alex, I don't believe. Not, but now you've told me, I believe you said that there's been statements that he was trying to put a hit on Joe.
There are alleged statements, through a close friend of Lori Vallow, that she said that she wanted a hit to be put on Joe, but the job could never get done. And then now we have this recording that we're going to get into, allegedly, of Lori saying that she wanted to murder him as well. That's there on audio. But let's go to 2018. Joseph died in April 2018. What do you remember about the last time you spoke to him or met with him? Just your interactions.
Well,
So,
I saw Joe. He came and stayed with me.
I just want to recall to the viewers that Alex put this in his comedy stand-up routine.
Oh, right.
So just a little.
Right. Right. And Mona, if somebody has a heart issue or is unhealthy and they get stunned, tasered with a high level taser right in their heart, could that cause heart failure? And then maybe because he didn't die until 10 years later. So his lawyer is suggesting that the tasing might have had something to do with his death.
I mean, I'd have to know how many volts for how long, what the thing was, but it will interrupt your electrical activity if it's hard enough and long enough.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he was in the ER for 3 days,
yes,
it definitely did cause some kind of injury to him, because if you have a cardiac situation that needs to be observed, that will be 18 hours of observation, not 3 days. There's just have to do repeat tests and then let the person go. So I think the attorney's correct that it did injure him.
For sure. And I guess, we'll never know if it hurt his heart that affected him later, but okay.
Oh,
And
speaking
I
of
think
which,
the date was around.
I'm sorry. Somebody said it was the wrong petition. So yeah, I found this one too, the change.org petition. I just found it through Reddit. So I don't know if that's the right one.
Okay, I'm clicking on it right now and it looks okay to me. It says investigate Joe's. Yeah, it looks fine to me. It's got new signatures 2 weeks ago.
So I'm sorry. Yeah, just as Too Deep said, like people can't just put up all sorts of links unless you're a moderator.
Right. And what you can do is if you can't find it, just go to change.org and you can just do the search for Joe Ryan. It's called Phoenix Police Department investigate Joseph Ryan S. death. So if you can't find it, you can do a search of any of those words and narrow it down that way. But the link that I left out there should be right because I just clicked on it. And yeah, sorry about that. But it's also in the description of the video.
Around August, because I left town in August of 2018, yeah.
But he died April 2018, so it had to be what, the summer beforehand or
Yes.
17?
I went someplace on a trip and he stayed at my house. I know that.
Okay.
And the way he got here was he called me up and he was telling me about, he didn't have a place to live here pretty soon. And he asked if he could come stay with me. And I said, well, for a little while, I mean, I'm not here you're not my kid or anything. So yeah, I understand desperation. So he loaded up he had a Jeep wagon, large, one of those large Jeeps. And he loaded it up and brought all of his possessions and moved to Austin for a while.
How long did he stay? Do you remember?
Months.
So he was trying to get on his feet. What was he having? Financial issues? Just trying to find a job? Just tell me, like, obviously he needed help.
Well, seeing as how he's passed, I mean, I'll be honest, he did have a drinking issue. And he didn't have that all this time, all this case was going on and all this other stuff. But he told me that out in Arizona, he got 3 DWIs. And so he was unemployable in some ways. And I mean, you asked earlier about how he was doing. Well, he had money. I mean, he financed all this stuff, all of that going back and forth. And so he was now not unemployable. And from there, well, he went and lived with my brother for a couple of months too.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, I was kind of amazed at my brother's sympathy, but he had this garage apartment. And so Joe went over there to stay for a while. But then he eventually packed up and went to New York is where I thought he went. He has a sister.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believed that he was going to be in New York. But then when I found out he'd passed away, he'd moved back to Arizona, is what I believe the reports say. And that's what I've been hearing. So he'd gone on this journey all the way to New York and then gone back to Arizona. And he still had visitation in my order. And I'm not sure he was even getting it then. I mean, he was very dedicated and very motivated to try to save Tylee.
Yeah, and Tylee had moved to Kauai for some time.
It struck me that he said he was trying to save Tylee because he hadn't really said that up until now. That was pretty strong thing to say, I thought.
Yeah, I wish the attorney had given more details about, what they thought was going on with Lori and the way she treated Tylee.
Right. I would have followed up. Sorry, Justin, I know nothing about reporting, but that stopped me in my tracks, right? I think he had a list of questions he needed to get through in a certain amount of time, which is the way it goes. But I would have been like, what do you mean by safe? Could you elaborate on that? Like
he introduced it with the way she was feeding her and the constant
right.
pancreatitis.
Right. But I would have just let him go with that more. Yeah, for sure. That was in bold, right? It was a big statement.
Like, what do you mean save? Right.
Could you elaborate even more on that? Yeah. I just realized Jason and I match with our polka dot.
Maybe a couple of years almost. So they lost some time definitely because Lori left over to go there. So when you found out about
let's talk about Hawaii for a second. I just don't know what Hawaii has in her mind, but he was married to her on the beaches of Hawaii. It turns out that she got married to what's his name?
Chad Daybell.
Yeah.
November 2019. Yeah.
She has some kind of this attraction to being married on the beaches of Hawaii, and that's just another, who knows what that means, but I mean.
You spent a lot of time there.
Yes.
Yeah. And
okay. Well, let's look at it this way. If you're out in Hawaii, how can anybody come and visit your kids and stuff? If you want to keep them away for whatever reason, whether it's just, and I don't think it was for the best intentions, but that's speculation. Hawaii is a good place to go do that.
What's your reaction though to this Phoenix police looking back at Joe's case, his death investigation more than 2 years later?
Well, okay, so unfortunately, Alex has met his demise too, and it's all in this circle. This is the craziness of it all. Joe, in my opinion, was depressed. Okay, I could see him looking back over his history and seeing how it led him to go become drink too much and all that other stuff. And then he goes off to New York and it's not successful there. He ends up back in Phoenix and he's probably doesn't, I'm not sure what his economic status was there, but he probably doesn't have any money and he's depressed. I mean, I will tell you, he must have been super depressed by this point.
When you saw him, would you say, when he stayed with you and your brother?
Yes, I would say in general, he was, yes, I'll say yes. And I think that the stun gun affected his heart. I really believe that. And I believe he died of a heart attack. And there could be some relationship between that injury. I mean, he was in an emergency room for 3 days and the guy gets convicted for doing that to him, Alex. And we were talking about Alex. Well, what's the explanation there? Here's Alex over here and they've all got guns. I mean, this violence is in this case everywhere. I mean, well, look at the outcome. When we got Tylee and Colby, I think that they're looking at intentional conduct causing their demise, their passing. And I'm not sure if anybody's figured out. I'm not seeing any forensics on that.
Yeah, we don't have forensics.
He meant to say JJ there, not Colby.
Yeah, and you know what? The way that Justin righted it was very kind and
yes. Yeah, he was just, it's easy to make mistakes when you're talking, but it's just really all these things that he's saying are just so incredibly profound at this point. You can tell he's super sad about the situation. Of course, was this in 2020, this interview, Judy?
Yeah.
When was this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Forensics on Tylee and JJ's deaths and how that happened in Rexburg, Idaho. But besides them, how they were found and
right.
the gruesomeness of it all. When you hear that Lori allegedly said she wanted to kill Joseph, wanted to have him murdered somehow, this on a recording that just surfaced, are you shocked she would go out and say that publicly to people like that?
Well, no, as I said, I think she had Alex go over there and stick a stun gun on him. I mean, why would he? I mean, uncle, or what? I think he would be an uncle. Why would an uncle do all that?
But for her to say it to people like that in a public setting.
Well, this goes back to she's her ideas about religion have now become non-mainstream. The Mormonism that I read about is not what she thinks. She's got some hybrid belief about Mormonism that is crazy, and that's a sign that maybe she's mentally imbalanced. I don't think she's insane. I think she's mentally imbalanced. I mean, and mentally imbalanced in my profession. I mean, I've been doing this for 40 years. That's an invitation to do all kinds of illegal activity.
So could she have anything to do with this death at all? I mean, he's been cremated. I don't know what they look at when they review the case. And you did mention that maybe the stun gun attack had something to do with it. But she said in the police report they had not spoke. Her and Joe hadn't spoke for 2 years or so. When this happened, when he died.
Well, go get those police reports I mentioned earlier, and the visitation and those are within 2 years. I actually believe that happened within the 2 years of his death. They might be a little bit longer, but he was in the same area that she was, from traveling from New York back to Arizona, and he did have legal visitation. So I can't imagine how he didn't attempt to contact her. He did use email and texting. I'm not sure if they could get those records, but that would certainly be interesting to know, who he was texting and who he was emailing in that period of time. I mean, it's not that long. I mean, you could do a search on it.
And that's what Annie is asking for in that petition. That's specifically what she's looking for. If they would reopen the investigation and do that kind of.
If you had her email account, you could certainly figure out if he tried to contact her and if there's any response. I don't think that, if you want to get technical, I don't think he would have talked to her.
He definitely had some sort of contact, whether it was email or phone, unless you changed her phone number at some point, or maybe she just ignored or didn't answer to say that she had not spoken to him for 2 years. But I also want to know how much from your, you didn't just get to know him as a client, but for you to help him out, have him stay over, I mean, more of a friend. How much did Tylee mean to Joseph, from what you saw?
Everything. He didn't have any other children. And you have to remember, Joe grew up as an orphan. He didn't have a family. I mean, he has a sister apparently, but I believe she may have been adopted also. So the only family he had was Tylee.
So when it's all said and done, do you think his biggest heartbreak in his life was just not being able to raise her at all, losing all that time? That really was a big weight on him.
Absolutely. And she put an obstacle on every step of the road.
for him just to even see her.
Yes.
Yeah. And when you look at everything that has
So
transpired
sad.
now, Lori's last ex-husband, Charles, killed by Alex, who claimed self-defense. Then she takes the kids, JJ and Tylee, to Rexburg, marries Chad Daybell just weeks after. Chad's first wife suddenly dies.
Right.
Then the kids are killed. Then they're off in Hawaii, on a honeymoon. They don't cooperate with law enforcement. Then the kids' bodies are found on Daybell's property, buried. When you were finding out all this, this was national news, did you do a double take at first when it was all coming out? Like, hey, is that the same person that you were in court with? It's just like, what was your reaction? It's like, this was a huge story, and still is.
I knew immediately that was her. And she was acting exactly like, it didn't surprise me one bit.
Not one bit. I mean, but the circumstances, and these are...
Remember, sticking a stun gun to somebody's heart? That was just minor. But crazy, like I said, people who have got psychological issues, that's just the first step. She just got away with it and did more. I mean, in her mind, this is probably some kind of justified reaction.
But somehow her hands physically aren't.
It kind of seemed to me, because he's mentioned it a couple of times, that by connecting the stun gun and the heart attack that he died of, that basically he's saying they murdered him with the stun gun, right? Am I right? Are you picking that up?
Yeah, that it did ultimately lead to his death.
Right. Apart from all of the other potential that she broke in, because it appeared to have been broken into his apartment. Somebody was in there. Apart from maybe poisoning or any other additional thing, just that alone would have been enough for them to investigate. No, or how would that work if somebody injured you but you didn't die immediately? You died 10 years later. That's still murder, right?
Yeah, if you can get medical expert
Right.
testimony to prove causation. Yeah, because there was like a kind of going off tangent, but recently near where I live, there was a case where a guy was trying to steal some equipment from Home Depot, and he shoved this 80-something-year-old man who was working at Home Depot. He shoved him so hard that the elderly man hit his head, but he didn't die until at least a month or two later in the hospital. But yeah, now I can't remember what exactly happened. I think he did get convicted of something.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't first degree murder.
Right.
Yeah, but
Wasn't
sure, if there is
there a
causation.
Wasn't there a case just like that in New York where somebody shoved an
Yeah,
older
the
woman?
older lady who hit her head on the ground.
Mhm.
Yeah, so sure, yeah, I think that young woman who shoved her also got convicted.
Of something, yeah. But
Yeah.
this whole interview is making me think of so many patterns that were set up for the future. Even with Tammy Daybell, wasn't there something with an open window and maybe coming in and out of there for Alex to help Chad?
I don't remember that.
I remember a detail like that, like a sneak in, and
Mm.
it's all like too similar. It's almost like the same playbook refined while I'm listening to this interview. That's reminding me of other facts that were, perplexing me during this case. But
Yeah. I don't think anyone else was home. I don't know that he would have had to sneak into Daybell's. But one of the things along what you're saying is I was thinking about how Brandon Boudreaux and Tammy Daybell both got shot at and thought it was a paintball gun. Like they both, like, what's up with that? Like,
I
is
don't
that
know.
common? Like, what? I thought that was weird.
I don't even think about paintball guns.
I know. It's like I've never seen one. I don't have any idea why. Like if somebody shot at me, I've never been shot at, but I think I'd know it. I don't know. I just thought it was weird that they both thought
There's
that.
big pain blob that comes out. There's a
Suppo-
big color bomb, and then
Well, I
you
think
it's like
I think they were saying they can shoot with it without having the blob, like a gun without bullets, right? I don't know. I don't know anything about this, but I just thought it was weird that they both said the same thing.
I don't know. Maybe it's an activity in the LDS community.
Common, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So I was thinking that Harley was saying in the commission of a felony. So in the commission of a felony, if a person dies during that action, it's a felony murder.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. So I feel like that's what the lawyer was trying to get at. And certainly there would be enough experts because it's happened where people tased and died of heart attacks.
Yeah, but not 10 years later. And I'm just wondering if maybe because Joe was out of work at this point and hurting financially, if Lori possibly thought he was worth more dead than alive for the.
Oh yeah, she got life insurance. She got
But
money.
yeah, and she was always going, Tylee has money. She'll
She
take
didn't
care
get it. She took it. Yeah, she got
Yeah.
mhm.
But she got her Social Security benefits too.
Right.
Yeah.
So sad. Yeah, and Too Deep says, I bet Lori would have taken money in exchange for Tylee. That is so sad. Yeah, if he had it to offer. But by then she drained him of everything, including his soul, evidently. Okay.
In anything, it seems like she's always connected. She knows the people that are involved, but she doesn't have her hands on the stun gun, or she hasn't been charged with murder. It's interesting how her hands never appear to be dirty in anything criminal. But I guess that's a topic that, law enforcement will have to figure out and dig into.
They have the law of agency, and agents do work for other people. And so you got the crime boss who gets the hitman, and the hitman goes out there and kills the snitch or whoever. Well, the crime boss is the one who told him to. And Lori's the crime boss.
She has those
she has that power.
Intangibles.
Look, Daybell is at her beck and call. She had lots of these guys. She is a master manipulator. And it's because, she was actually, from everything I can see, she is a very good-looking woman. And she uses that looks it's like a Venus flytrap. You get these people in there, and they do what she wants.
That's an interesting point. You talk about manipulation, and I want you to go back to the mannerisms that you witnessed in the court hearings for the custody of Tylee. What did you see in the courtroom then, and like what you see now in 2020 of Lori most recently? How do you describe how she acts? How does she handle people, her body language, things like that?
What I just said, I saw her in action. She's a hairdresser by trade. So she can dress up. She can look good. And she's blessed with good looks. And
but intellectually, when you would talk to her face to face, or you would question her, was there a challenge or no? What would you say about how she would interact?
I never had any question that she was mentally challenged in any way. She had full faculties. It doesn't take much to break the law. You don't have to be a mob boss to run a couple of people, especially, I guess, if you got I hate to say this, but if you're providing sex, the mob boss isn't providing sex. She could. She was a master. She was a master manipulator.
I've heard this many times.
She has a whole plate of weapons, and she uses them.
And so in your 40 years of doing this profession, doing family law, so you've seen so many custody battles. You've seen some ugly battles, I'm assuming. But what about this one? I don't know if you keep a ranking, but just how are you going to remember this one? The Ryan Vallow battle. What was
top 3? Maybe it's the top. I think it really was. I have never gone and read books, not law books. I'm talking about books about religion.
Because you needed to understand what was going on. That's why you had to do that. So this took a lot out of you.
Oh yes, you don't know. Lawyers are known to go and do the background, and yes, I was looking at the background, but one book wasn't enough. And then I got kind of really interested in how different the Mormon faith is than regular Christianity. They're all claim to be Christians, and then they appear to be, but their branch with the celestial part, that's not Christianity. The celestial part is definitely the Mormons. And I don't disrespect that, but hers, now we look at what Daybell's doing, and it's one step beyond. I'm just not what I was reading. It sounds even, more out there. I don't want to use the word.
And then the violence, and then these sexual abuse allegations. This case definitely had just a lot going on, and a lot of drama for everyone.
When you put a kid up to lie about your father, that's not good. Poor Tylee, growing up with that kind of starting from second year of your life, and you've been now and being part of a conspiracy to deprive him of visitation with her. And it's just tragic. And she'd had no problems doing that. I've had other cases when they were using that same technique. And it's sad that every time they come up, Tylee was younger than most, 2 years old. It's, yeah, I'd say.
Right. Lori was making claims that she was just like a baby, and she would repeat that to Tylee, that this was happening to her when she was just a little child, like a toddler, and reminding her of it even after she recanted. And then she got Colby to make some allegations as well later. And I don't know that Colby ever recanted.
He didn't recant, as far as I recall, from at least, the trials area in Idaho. But the saddest part is thinking about how the way Tylee's life is being presented, it was forever. And she was always being manipulated by her mom and being fed things that she couldn't compete with her mother's alleged beauty, which, I mean, Tylee was much
Yes.
prettier.
I think that was part of the problem. To be honest, Tylee was way prettier.
She was very pretty. And it just makes me really sad that she must have been so tortured, but didn't have a chance of figuring it out on her own. So Judy, in your domestic cases, do you ever see the kids that don't make it out well from all the fighting and manipulation?
Well, unfortunately, I don't usually have much of a relationship with my clients' kids because it's just the parent who is my client. So, there are times when the judge could go ahead and appoint a guardian ad litem who's supposed to meet with the kid and kind of advocate for them. So, that's what we have here in my county to try to make sure that kids' voices are heard.
Yeah, but just even what I'm even saying is in a lighter way, if you're hearing your client fighting with their spouse in front of their children, that's horrible enough as it is, just psychologically for the children, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, just based on what I would hear from my clients, sometimes I can tell, boy, their kids are probably pretty stressed out, like kids acting out or hurting themselves, like cutting themselves or something, or having to see a psychiatrist or see a therapist and stuff. So it is pretty awful. But at the same time, sometimes I've realized that I can't just 100% believe what my client is telling me, because this is what happens in family law. You only hear your client's side of the story. So a lot of times you start realizing, okay, whatever they're saying about the other person, well, it takes two to tango, and these people were married for a while and, had children or had a child. So sometimes it turns out that maybe your client really isn't as great and blame-free as they would think that they are. So it's tough, but luckily we do have these programs here, the parenting coordinator type of thing, where a parenting coordinator could be appointed to be like a go-between the two parents and help resolve issues. And that person can also potentially go to court to testify, which is great because you need to have some sort of third party person who can tell the judge, this is what's going on, as opposed to two people all being self-interested and exaggerating or lying about the other person.
That's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah. So we try to do some things to lessen the conflict and try to, make things a little better for the kids involved.
That's good. Yeah. There's only so much. It seems like this lawyer really cared, though. He really got involved with Joe. I mean, even letting him live with him for a while. That's just amazing.
I can't believe that. I mean, I have never heard of any attorney,
Right.
much less the attorney's brother, letting that client come and live with them for free, I guess. I mean, who does that? I don't think that's a good thing to do.
No, it's dangerous. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he seems pretty relaxed about it. Justin doesn't bring that video up that he referred to earlier in this interview here. But I just wanted to point out, I just remembered in that interview, in that video that they were referring to earlier, this was when Lori said she put out a hit on Joe. At one point, she wanted him dead, is what I remember her saying. Annie had that video up. I was going to find it, but I remembered I can probably find it somewhere. But in any case, she introduced herself at one of these gatherings. And I believe one of these gatherings were with those gatherers. The 7 gatherers were there, as well as some others, if I'm not mistaken. But she does talk about her former husband, Joe Ryan, and talks about how he abused her children. So she continues on with these allegations long after. And that how finding Jesus and attending the temple every day helped her escape that. But in that video, she also said, I don't have a murderous heart.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where Annie's channel name came from. But yeah, she clearly, it's interesting you would say, I don't think I've ever had to say that in my life to anyone. Like, why would you have to say that?
Yeah. Why are you making it so obvious that you don't have a murderous heart?
Right. She's all about love. She loves everybody, including the jury in the last trial.
I can't with her anymore. That's why I can't watch any interviews of her. It's just, all right. I think this is about ready to wrap up. And there's a quick document that I pulled up too I want to share.
Probably the worst case I've seen of real abuse. Not physical abuse. This is totally mental abuse, using other people abuse. I mean, you got lots of cases where they go beat each other up all the time and they get drunk and slug it out and push each other and all that. And that's kind of like the standard family violence case. This is a family violence case, but it's all mental.
That's funny. This
was just mental destruction of Joseph, what he took, what he had to go through, and never any evidence that was found in court.
Well, that's like to see, hey, he stole the money. This is more subjective.
You said the mattress was checked and nothing.
Yes.
Nothing. No DNA.
They never found any of that. Now, I'm going to guarantee you, they tried hard. Okay. They wanted to believe he was a sexual predator. See, you put a little child out there and the child says this happened. They want to believe that bigger than anything. And so this is the manipulation. And they went down. When you go over there and go and DNA test a whole mattress, I mean, usually you could take the underwear or, something.
Yeah, anything else? Was anything else done, or was that the main thing, the mattress?
Well, no, all the sheets.
Sheets, okay.
That was, they couldn't, there's really nothing else you could go, in my opinion, there's nothing else that would have had that type of evidence they're looking for. I've had cases that they actually, you can believe it, photograph their, they take their cell phone out, they're photographing their illegality. Now, that would have been good. But there's no video of anything.
This was back in 2000. Yeah, the 2000s. I mean, there was technologies, these phones, but not like now. But okay, so, but Joe had to feel vindicated then.
No, well, yes, he was vindicated. It wasn't that kind of vindication where you're, pumping like Rocky.
Yeah.
It's much more subtle. And even when he won, he didn't really come out the clear victor. When he wins, they say, well, we're going to give you this step thing and you're going to go pay all these professionals and go get, psychological exams, even when they found he didn't do it. I mean, that's not a victory.
Yeah. He just wanted the normal custody with the daughter.
The system failed him in some ways too.
No.
Because the evidence now was in the other side, but it didn't seem like he was getting the other side results that he should have. It's that, as I told you, it's an err on the side of caution. I said, well, what do you need in order to get out from under that rope? I mean, I don't know what other decision could have been made so that he didn't have to go through all that.
Judy, do you know about this, about how when somebody is actually found not guilty, but they're still kind of in the view of the law, they're still kind of in family court have that shadow hanging over them and they don't really get vindicated or cleared?
I've never had that happen in any of my cases before. Luckily, there's no situation where there's
Good.
a criminal case that went all the way through that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
All right. Okay. So I think he's going to wrap up here.
It's a very sad situation. Okay.
I thought he did well in spite of it all. I mean, he did keep his chin up.
Oh.
Hey, Keith, thank you so much for your time. You answered all my questions, and it's a case that goes far back, so your memory hasn't failed you. Too bad. So I appreciate it.
It's getting close, but anyway.
Yeah. All right. Well, take care. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right.
So there it is. I mean,
What a likable man. This is
yeah.
yeah.
Really seems super easygoing. I found, as I was reviewing this, I found a document I wanted to read, it really supports what he was saying. It's from Travis County Juvenile Probation Domestic Relations Office's July 14th, 2008, case number, blah, blah, blah. In the interest of Tylee Ashlyn Ryan, a child, report to the court. It is my understanding, this is very short, is my understanding that the court wishes to review progress and issues in this case. I will attempt to, I have to zoom it in, or it's really blurry. I will attempt to encapsulate some of the concerns and activities that I'm aware of since our last hearing on June 13th. There are other issues and reactions to the issues I address in this report. I trust they'll be resolved in the July 18th review hearing. First, Tylee's health has improved because she had a pancreatic attack during this process too, and she seems to be doing well. Leslie Smith, her therapist, has raised concerns about the level of trauma Tylee experienced in the hospital and the stress that she continually experienced throughout this conflict. In light of all this, Tylee appears to be resilient and happy about visits with her father, according to Ms. Smith, Dr. Wilcox, and the supervisor, Ruth Delansky. The treatment team invited me to participate with them in their meeting on July 1st. Visitation treatment issues, the clinical concerns were discussed. At that time, there were concerns raised regarding Tylee's mother misrepresenting information, primarily regarding Tylee's medical intake forms. At the same meeting, July 1st, Ms. Smith informed us that Tylee reported being happy about the visits with her dad and wanting those visits to continue during their last session. Ms. Smith then reported that Tylee added something along the lines of, quote, "I am scared about overnights," end quote. When Ms. Smith questioned her about this, she said something like, in quote, "because Joe molested me and Colby," end quote. When Tylee's mother came into the session toward the end, Ms. Smith reports that Tylee looked at her mother and said, "I told her." So she's thinking that the mother, that Lori told her to say these things. And she reported back that she did. But of course, she wasn't supposed to say that in front of them.
Yeah.
So it's just so sad. So sad. That's just one of many other indications that she was coached, and they of course believed that.
Yeah. Did we ever hear anything about how Tylee reacted when her father died?
I'm not, maybe Chelsea knows. I don't know.
When Annie went to visit, because Annie went, and that's when she got the photo albums, she had a hard time getting time alone with her. Lori wasn't, allowing for a lot of that time. She talked about a lot of really weird things that happened. And in that visit, I think that was the last time. I don't think she ever wanted to see her after that. But until then, she didn't realize what was going on, obviously. But she never really got to talk to Tylee a whole lot about her feelings, but she really wanted to talk to her about it. But she shut it down. She was walled in by her mother.
Yeah. It's such a sad story. This poor girl. What a sad short life.
If it was all made up, she would certainly know it, right? And then to have to continue the lie for her mother. I mean, that is just so much. it's hard to imagine what that must have felt like for a child.
It was her whole entire existence
Mhm.
that she was manipulated, brainwashed, abused emotionally, physically, drugged, hospitalized, probably like Munchausen's by proxy. And then they used JJ to manipulate her to come with them when she didn't want to. At the very end, crying at her grandma's.
Oh,
The whole thing is just, and now, if it's not enough, now she's blaming her for JJ in her, non-existence,
who was
saying
a grandmother?
no. Lori's blaming everything on her daughter, on Tylee.
Oh, she's blaming Tylee for yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. I see what you're
she
saying.
blames. She won't. Ugh, it just hasn't even ended in her death. It's just phenomenally evil.
Right. Yeah, that's why I can't listen to her
I
at
know.
all. I just like enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Ugh.
I only watched a little snippet because that Eaton, whatever it's called, the YouTube channel that's focusing on the case, they had a little sneak preview yesterday, so I clicked on it.
Oh,
And I was like, I can't believe it. Like they're interviewing her like she's some sort of celebrity or something. And then she still got that horrible attitude and the fake, phony, indignant tone of voice. And I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah, and
know,
this
it's
is
just
her
like-
first set of interviews that she got to be that way with one. Wasn't it like one ABC person, and then there was a third one since Charles's trial where she's gotten a lot of attention.
well, she did Keith Morrissey, which I wasn't interested in.
Right.
And then a couple other, local channels. And then Nate's been begging her. But I just feel like Nate he's in this tiny little town. And I visited there. I know this area very well. I have a friend who has a cabin up there. It's beautiful in Idaho, and it's right by Yellowstone. And I've spent time there. And even in where the little courthouse is, I know I can picture it right in front of me. It's a tiny, the first place until it got moved around. But, and I was so interested in the case because they were missing and I, that was during COVID. Right. And so we were all like on YouTube more and whatnot. And I was just like, oh, they're from that area and I know these people and I know it's a high Mormon area and that kind of thing. And it's like, where is she? Where are they? It's just so sad because that's when children are missing. That's a big thing for me. But Nate, so it's just this tiny, tiny, tiny little jurisdiction that he has for news. And he's hanging on to every last every last ounce he can squeeze out of that juice because it's almost over, right? Unless, but I mean, he was even down there in Arizona for those trials. It's like, that's not Idaho news anymore. I just feel like, okay, Nate, find another news story. It's time to move on. I don't know. It's up to him, but yeah, that's just me. Maui Smith. Yeah, same thing. I can't watch her either. I don't get it. I don't want to encourage it. I don't want to enable that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who cares? Let them rot in prison.
Yeah, it's done.
Please just go away.
Just go away. I feel that way to a large degree about.
I feel that way about Charlie.
Charlie is exactly what I was going to say. It's just like, go.
Right.
I don't care what happened to him in the prison. It's like, I don't need to know every detail about what they're saying in their jail cells. And it's like, goodbye.
Yeah. Or Sigfredo. It's like, who cares what Sigfredo's doing in prison? Like, he's just trash.
Judy, jail can be a dangerous place for a mom like Donna.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't know what's going on, but
we're doing okay.
Shower while you're brushing your teeth or doing laundry. I mean, it could be a bad thing.
Oh, right.
Or just all her bad diet and canteen junk food will probably do her in too.
Yeah, now Idaho and Donna Adelson are being tied in because of potato chips, the big the whole shebang, right?
Yeah, all those mashed potatoes she's eating. Yeah. Yeah.
Dawn, do you
So,
think Judy ate a bowl of mashed potatoes for a 2-hour live? And she kept playing. I'm like, oh, it's got to be so cold by now.
hey, I added real butter. Yeah, real butter to those like mashed potato flakes. Yeah.
Did you know that in Wisconsin prisons, it's against the law to not serve butter? They cannot use margarine in prison.
Oh, I
It's
had
a
no idea.
Wisconsin thing because of the dairy state.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, good for them because I don't think margarine's good for you anyway.
Neither of them are. I mean, butter is
Isn't
much
it?
better than, yeah,
There's no, so in Italy, is it only like olive oil with your bread?
probably.
Then if I go to jail, I want to be in jail in Italy. For
Yeah.
that.
Supposedly the food
the
in the
olive oil.
European jails is pretty good. I've seen YouTube videos.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
where?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Too Deep is saying that they felt the same about the Sherry Papini. Yeah, I didn't want to watch Sherry
Oh,
Papini.
same
Like, why
thing.
is she
I didn't
getting
watch it.
attention? She's pathetic. It's
Yeah.
just because she's like supposedly like better looking than most of these like lying crime victims.
Right.
That
Right.
people gave her attention.
Right.
Yeah.
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 I'm really glued to the it's not being streamed, so I'm just going by local news reports about the Kentucky versus Brooks Houck in the Crystal Rogers case. Brooks Houck, as well as his co-conspirator Joseph Lawson. Steve Lawson, his father, was already found guilty of conspiracy like a couple of weeks ago, but I'm really glued to that. I'm only glued to the news coverage because there's not even audio of the trial.
That's
I wish
frustrating.
they would have at least gotten audio approved, but because I remember Chad's trial? Which trial was audio?
Lori.
Lori's.
Wasn't it? Yeah, it was Lori's.
Lori's. We had to listen to audio, which
and,
is
and like a day late.
right. But I'm going to go live if anyone's interested in hearing about all that, because there's a lot of new evidence. It's really interesting. So I'm kind of just hanging on to every news report and writing notes. And so I have like the big outline that I'm going to go through maybe toward the end of the week as that one starts wrapping up. It's supposed to end, like the judge said, like by July 8th or something like that. There was a lawyer on one of the local news stations, I think I gave Mona a heart attack last week, who said, oh, it's going to be done by Friday, which was like a 3-day trial. And I was like, he said it was going to be done by Friday. It's going so fast.
10 years for a 3-day trial.
I know.
Yeah. How can it be that fast?
So, but I'm going to do my best to recreate the evidence. I'm really invested in that and just thinking about her mom. But there are so many parallels with that case and the Dan Markel case. So many, and you can even see bits of it in the JJ and Tylee in Charles Vallow case with the Cox crime family, we'll call them. It's really weird how they all start sounding somewhat familiar.
Yeah,
so
a bunch of like crooked, shady people who, they're all so tightly knit with their family with these
they're like, I think the
feelings
house
of incest.
maybe a criminal family with drugs or something, which is what Crystal might have had info about before her demise, right, Dawn?
Possibly. Her mother is contending that she definitely had knowledge of things that Brooks didn't want her to share.
It reminds me of what we were just talking about with Joe Ryan, because Crystal's dad is not going to get justice.
No, exactly. Or the police officer, Jason Ellis, who was murdered right before this.
Yeah, Judy, in this like small town in Kentucky, they're just like, got killed by a gun. Oopsie. Like, I'm looking for my daughter.
Right. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. Yeah.
It's like you can't even write this like like a television series of insanity.
But there are so many little common things with these criminal families. It's like there's nothing super original about any of them. They're all trying the same things, like speaking in code or, the enmeshment, like you talk about, all that. It's just weird. It's like, can't they think of something different? Like, why are these all beginning to sound so much alike? It's kind of crazy.
Too busy committing crimes to be original. It's sort of like how, I mean, movies and television are all just rehashed from the same stories with a little twist.
And well, I think the big thing too is they just think they're above it all. They think they're better and that they can get by with it, but they think they're better. And so they're justified in doing these things, which that is the biggest thing. That's the biggest dangerous sign.
That's the show that's like The House. It's called Justified. There's a series.
Oh, they have a series about it?
It's not them. It's a fictional.
Okay.
I only saw 1 or 2 seasons, but my husband and son were into it. So I know it was like this Kentucky drug family controlling everything in the area. So it reminded me of it. It's called Justified. So
you know what they have, what they call the drug dealers in the drug community there? The cornbread mafia.
Oh, I thought they were going to call them like This TV is 5 while we're going.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it's actually organized crime. It's mafia-like crime, but they call it the cornbread mafia. It's like hillbilly mafia.
So I think when Donna's trial's over, Judy, and Wendy's arrested and tried, and maybe Harvey's arrested and tried, we should all 3 like write a screenplay called This TV's About 5. And, not really based on any truth, but
based loosely.
Maybe we could sell it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is why I like true crime better than fiction, though, because it just seems so much more interesting to me to think that, wow, these are real people that actually thought they would get away with murder. And this is what these people really did. And, their motive and their mistakes, this is all real. So I don't really care about crime fiction.
I don't at all. I watch zero crime fiction or read zero. I was never interested in any of that. It was just trials. And real it's like stuff. Better than there's nothing better than that, than reality.
Speaking of better than fiction, I had visitors in from out of town, so I couldn't go to Monica's sentencing. Did you watch that?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was very interesting. Wow. So
that
sad.
Off the charts. That was the craziest sentencing I've ever seen in
the victim statements, you mean, not the sentencing.
And the sentencing and what the DA said. It was like, what? It was like, what? Right. I mean, not that I'm disagreeing with everything, but I didn't know that you could go that off the charts with everything
with yelling at the defendant and
cursing,
calling
it was
her
a lot. It was that was hard for me to take. I loved Luigi though. Luigi's was just,
that was good. I liked. Yes, he's a well-educated gentleman.
He's gentle, and like he doesn't need to be angry because he doesn't want to hang his life on that. It's like, no, this is your problem now, Monica. Bye-bye.
What made me think of that is I wanted to go to that trial because I knew 2 murderers were going to be testifying. And I thought, I got to see what this is like, speaking of like the drama of it. And you're just sitting in a room feet away from somebody that's just a regular person, basically. Maybe not well educated, but it just didn't even feel like what I thought it was going to feel like. And it was just odd because I kept thinking, I can't believe this human did this. And I'm just sitting there looking. So you just don't know what anybody's capable of in the world of humans. It's just wild to see, just looking at a regular person and like, how did they commit a slaughter like that?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
Why people think they can pay somebody to do it and it's not them. They
Right.
didn't do anything. I just set it up.
Right. And then blame them.
I just told Alex where Joe would be and gave him a taser. I don't know, go buy a taser.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, I do have to get going because I didn't realize we're going to go on for so long. But this was very interesting and very educational since you guys have been following this whole case a lot more in detail than I have. So, and it's, of course, it's always interesting to see these similarities with the Dan Markel Adelson case and the arrogance of people who think that they're going to get away with it, and they think they're smarter than everybody and they're
Right.
justified.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. It's always interesting too to hear lawyers' take on it, even though he wasn't involved in any of these trials or anything like that. But another interesting lawyer was Brandon Boudreau's lawyer, his family court lawyer too. He was commentating, but I do think he had an interview, I think maybe with Justin Lum also. So in any case, well, it's been great chat to see all of you that are, and especially Chelsea. She's very, very informed
In the
about this
know.
case. Oh, and she says the Cornbed Mafia might have been associated. Well, they might have blamed it on Summer Wells' case and Mickey Stein. Possibly. Could very well be. I feel so bad that Summer Wells was never returned or found either. This makes me sick. Yeah.
Wow, more cases I gotta look into. I haven't followed that one.
That was too sad. I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, but yeah. Well, it's nice to see you, friends, and chat and everyone. And
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Mona and Don. It's great to talk with you guys, and because I don't have the brain capacity to follow so many different cases, and this Lori Daybell Vallow case had like dozens of
A
people
lot.
to keep track of. It's like,
Mhm.
what? This like huge like family tree of people killing off people or trying to kill each other, and it's just bizarre. Yeah.
Crazy. And
Yeah.
they're ever so religious too. That's the
Yeah.
That's
They're
just
justified in some
yeah.
crazy way because of religion.
Some kind of made up religion thing. Yeah. All right, ladies. Well, good night. Nice to see
Great
you.
talking.
See you
Yeah,
soon.
thank you guys for watching us. Okay.
It was
Take
great
care.
to see an interview again. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye bye.